Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by outsourcing around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. So when you buy from American Giant, you're taking a stand for hardworking people, local communities, and quality clothes. American Giant directly supports American manufacturers and ensures you aren't footing that tariff bill. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
Okay, picture this if you can. It's June 12th, 2025. We're at the Wilshire Federal Building in Los Angeles.
Right.
And right in the middle of a federal press conference, you see a U.S. senator being physically removed, shoved down, handcuffed by federal agents. It's quite a scene.
Yeah, absolutely extraordinary. Seeing a sitting senator treated like that publicly with officials and press right there watching, it's just, well, startling.
Exactly. And that really striking image, that's the heart of our deep dive today. We're looking into this intense clash. It involves Senator Alex Padilla, the Department of Homeland Security federal agents.
And it's all playing out with this background of heightened immigration enforcement and some really big questions about federal power being asked right there in L.A.
We've got sources here, and they paint, frankly, two very different pictures of what actually went down.
Very different. And they definitely connect this single incident to these much larger, ongoing political fights, legal battles, too.
Right. So our goal here is to kind of unpack all of that. We want to understand the incident itself, obviously, look at the immediate reactions, which, as you said, are wildly different.
Yeah.
And then sort of connect the dots, right? Link this moment to those broader tensions over immigration, over federal authority that the source material really brings to the surface.
Okay, so let's start by setting that scene. Los Angeles, June 12th, the Wilshire Federal Building.
Right. You've got DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. She's holding a press conference. The topic, an update on recent federal immigration enforcement, ICE operations specifically.
And those operations, the sources tell us, had already caused protests in the city, so tensions were kind of high already.
Definitely seems that way. And Senator Alex Padilla, he's also in the building at the same time.
Yeah, but not initially for the press conference, right? The sources say he was actually there for a totally separate, previously scheduled meeting.
That's right, with other federal officials, including, interestingly, General Gregory Guillot, who heads U.S. Northern Command.
Which is significant, given Northcom's role in domestic security. So that meeting itself might tie into the whole federal deployment issue simmering in L.A.
Good point. But Padilla also decides to go into Secretary Noem's press conference.
And this is where, his background really matters. The sources make a point of highlighting this.
Yeah, he's the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary's Immigration Subcommittee.
Right. And he's the son of Mexican immigrants. He's been a very outspoken critic of the administration's immigration tactics, especially the escalated enforcement.
He has. He's on record condemning earlier ICE raids, accusing the administration of things like terrorizing communities, breaking apart families, even putting citizens in harm's way. Strong words.
Very strong. So when he goes to this press conference, according to his side of the story and these sources, it wasn't just like a random impulse.
No, he says his office had been trying to get answers from DHS about these specific LA operations, about the National Guard being sent in, the Marines too.
And they weren't getting much back. Little to no information is the quote used.
So he saw showing up, trying to ask a question as part of his job. His constitutional duty, he called it, to conduct oversight of the Department of Homeland Security.
He wanted answers publicly, it seems, on the record.
Which brings us right to that moment of confrontation. Secretary Noem is speaking. And some descriptions of the sources say her remarks were pretty pointed.
Yeah, apparently including a line about needing to liberate the city, Los Angeles, from its socialist leadership through increased operations.
Wow. Okay. And then Padilla interrupts.
He does, loudly, according to the accounts. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary.
And that's the flashpoint.
Yeah.
Because immediately the sources say Secret Service agents, part of Noem's security detail, move in.
Yep. He's grabbed by the jacket, apparently, shoved out of the room.
And then taken down. forced to the ground by a mix of FBI and Secret Service agents.
Restrained right there on the floor, handcuffed, face down.
The sources even quote him protesting, saying hands off, and apparently mentioning that he couldn't physically lie flat and keep his hands behind his back at the same time.
And there's that detail, too, about an FBI agent reportedly blocking a staffer's phone camera, telling them to stop recording.
Yeah, just a really intense, chaotic scene described there. And right after it happens, you get these two completely conflicting narratives emerging.
Almost instantly. Padilla himself, he was released pretty quickly. No formal arrest, no charges filed.
And he holds his own press conference not long after. Visibly emotional, the reports say.
And his story is consistent. He was there peacefully just trying to ask a question in his official capacity.
Right. And then was almost immediately forcibly removed, forced to the ground, and handcuffed. He made sure to emphasize, I was not arrested. I was not detained.
And then he drew that comparison, which was pretty powerful.
It was. He said, if this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, I can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers.
Urging people to keep protesting peacefully, vowing to hold the administration accountable.
Okay, but then you have the administration's take. Totally different. Coming from DHS, the FBI, the White House.
Yeah, Tricia McLaughlin from DHS basically called it disrespectful political theater.
Right. Said Padilla interrupted, didn't identify himself properly, wasn't wearing his Senate security pin.
And crucially, that he lunged toward Secretary Noam. That's a key claim, that he didn't back away when told.
And therefore, the Secret Service thought he was maybe an attacker and acted appropriately in their view.
Then you had Dan Bongino, FBI Deputy Director, chiming in on X, reinforcing that claim about the security pin and adding that Padilla physically resisted law enforcement.
And the White House, Abigail Jackson, called it grandstanding, an immature theater kid stunt.
And even sort of pivoted, suggesting Democrats were more upset about Padilla than about alleged violent riots and assaults on law enforcement in L.A., kind of deflecting there.
So yeah, one event, two completely opposite interpretations, motives, actions, everything disputed. And predictably, this ignited a huge political reaction.
Oh, absolutely. You saw Democrats condemning it almost immediately and very broadly.
California Governor Gavin Newsom, for instance, tweeted it was absolutely abhorrent and outrageous, called on Republican leaders to condemn it too.
And he added that warning, didn't he? If they can handcuff a U.S. senator for asking a question, imagine what they will do to you.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass also spoke out strongly,
questioning how federal agents could possibly not recognize one of California's own senators.
Right. And she also noted Padilla as the state's first Latino senator, adding another layer. And she pushed back hard on Noam, calling L.A. a war zone.
You had lots of others weighing in, too. Schumer, Schiff demanding answers. Booker, Warren expressing strong support for Padilla.
And Representative Maxwell Frost reportedly even called for subpoenaing Kristi Noem over it. So really strong reactions on that side.
On the Republican side, though, the response detailed in the sources was, well, more mixed, but generally tended towards defending the agents and criticizing Padilla.
Speaker Mike Johnson apparently suggested Padilla should be censured by the Senate.
Wow. And other Republicans, lawmakers, and commentators sort of echoed the administration's points. Padilla was shouting, "No ID visible," he resisted.
Caroline Leavitt used similar language, calling it disrespectful political theater, a stunt.
So you really see the partisan lines drawn immediately and sharply over this incident.
And it's so important for us looking at this and for you listening to remember, we're just laying out these different viewpoints as they're presented in the source material.
Exactly. We're not taking a side here. Our job is to show you the conflicting narratives, the different ways this single event was framed and interpreted by the key players involved.
Because this event, as the sources make really clear, it wasn't just about Padilla and Noam in that room. It's deeply tangled up in that bigger picture.
Definitely. The intensified federal immigration enforcement, the administration's use of federal forces, National Guard, Marines specifically in Los Angeles, that's the crucial context.
Secretary Noam's press conference was about those very things, the ICE operations, the federal troop deployment.
And that deployment itself was already a huge point of contention. Governor Newsom had filed a legal challenge against it.
Right, and the arguments from critics like Newsom, Padilla, and others, as laid out in the sources, are pretty stark.
They call it unprecedented overreach, a manufactured crisis. Language like terrorizing communities.
Accusations that it's an attack on our constitutional order, maybe an attempt to test the limits of presidential power, to circumvent due process, really fundamental questions being raised.
And Padilla, given his role on that Senate Judiciary Immigration Subcommittee, is right in the thick of these debates.
His history shows that. The sources mention him pushing for investigations into past IC raids, condemning policies like family detention.
And what I found really telling was the mention of his opposition to even the attempt to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798.
Right, that's a really old, kind of obscure law.
Exactly. It allows the president to deport non-citizens from countries the U.S. is hostile towards. Bringing that up shows just how deep the historical and legal tensions run here. It's not just about current policy fights.
So when you step back and look at this whole incident through the lens of these sources, what's the main takeaway? What does it really highlight?
Well, it's clearly an extraordinary event. You just don't see this happen. And it really underscores the severe escalation in tensions.
Yeah, between the administration and its critics, particularly over immigration policy and maybe more broadly, the use of federal power.
You have the administration framing it one way, a necessary response, they'd say, to a senator behaving improperly, maybe even posing a threat.
And then you have the Democrats' view, as reflected in the sources. This is an alarming affront to democracy, a worrying sign maybe of authoritarian tendencies.
Just completely different interpretations of the same few minutes of interaction.
And the immediate impact, noted right there in the material, was these intensified calls for congressional oversight.
And the sense that this is definitely going to pour more fuel on the fire of those ongoing legal and political fights about federal power, military deployment domestically, immigration enforcement, all of it.
So wrapping it up, you've got this dramatic physical removal of a U.S. senator. You have these starkly contrasting stories about what happened and why.
And it all fits into these larger, really contentious battles over immigration, federal authority, and the relationship between different levels of government.
The source material kind of leaves us hanging with this thought, which is worth considering. The full implications of this event on the upcoming political landscape and the national discourse on civil liberties remain to be fully seen.
Yeah, and that's really the question to ponder, isn't it? What does an incident like this, described in such opposing ways by the parties involved, actually suggest about the state of play between, say, Congress and the executive branch, or federal and state authorities?
And maybe even more fundamentally, how do you think about that balance? The balance between security, order, and individual civil liberties, especially when political tensions are running this high.
Definitely a lot to mull over, based on what we've seen in these sources today.